Captain Jake Harrison stood on the bridge of the USS Liberty and watched the stars through the main window. He had been in space for 6 months now, leading humanity's first mission beyond their home solar system. The ship was small compared to the massive vessels in science fiction movies, but it was the best Earth could build. "Captain, we're getting something strange on the sensors," said Lisa Taylor from her position at the navigation station. She was young, only 25, but she was the best pilot Earth had ever trained. Her fingers moved quickly over the control panel as numbers flashed across her screen. Jake walked over to look at her readings. "What kind of strange?" "Big ships, sir. Really big. They just appeared out of nowhere about 10,000 kilometers away." Lisa's voice was steady, but Jake could hear the worry underneath. "I count at least 15 vessels, and they're all bigger than anything we've ever built." Ben Rodriguez looked up from his engineering station. He was a quiet man who had spent his whole life working with machines. "Captain, these readings don't make sense. Those ships are putting out more energy than our entire power grid back on Earth." Amy Chen turned from her communications post. She had learned 12 languages before joining the space program, but now she faced something completely new. "Sir, they're trying to talk to us. The signal is coming through on multiple frequencies at once." Jake felt his heart beat faster. This was it. First contact with an alien species. Everything they had dreamed about and planned for was happening right now. "Put it through, Amy." The main screen flickered and then showed the interior of an alien ship. The creature that appeared was tall and thin, covered in blue-gray skin that looked like metal. Its eyes were large and black, and when it spoke, its voice was cold and emotionless. "Primitive mammals of the third planet," the alien said. "I am War Commander Thexel of the Zephyrian Empire. You have entered space that belongs to us. Your species will submit to our rule immediately." Jake looked around at his crew. Lisa had gone pale, but her hands stayed steady on her controls. Ben was staring at his readings with wide eyes. Amy was recording everything, her fingers moving quickly across her keyboard. "This is Captain Jake Harrison of the United Earth ship Liberty," Jake said, trying to keep his voice calm. "We come in peace. We're explorers, not conquerors. We had no idea this space belonged to anyone." The alien's head tilted slightly. "Peace is irrelevant. Your technological level suggests you achieved spaceflight recently. You are now subjects of the Zephyrian Empire. You will return to your home planet and prepare for integration into our civilization." "Integration?" Jake asked. "What does that mean?" "Your species will serve useful purposes. Your physical strength suggests suitability for manual labor. Your world's resources will be harvested efficiently. Those individuals who demonstrate adequate intelligence will be trained for more complex tasks." Jake felt anger rising in his chest. This creature was talking about enslaving humanity like they were animals. "And if we refuse?" War Commander Thexel made a sound that might have been laughter. "Refuse? You pilot a single small vessel with primitive chemical propulsion. We command a battle fleet with weapons that could destroy your entire planet. What possible reason do you have to refuse?" "Because we're human," Jake said simply. "We don't surrender to anyone." The alien was quiet for a moment. Then it spoke again, and this time Jake could hear something like confusion in its voice. "Your statement lacks logic. Your species cannot survive conflict with the Zephyrian Empire. We have conquered 47 different worlds. Our technology is thousands of years more advanced than yours. Resistance will result in complete extinction of your species." Lisa turned to look at Jake. "Captain, their ships are moving into formation around us. I'm reading weapon systems charging." Ben checked his instruments. "Sir, they're right about one thing. Those energy readings are off the charts. We wouldn't last 10 seconds in a fight." Jake thought about Earth, about the billions of people who had no idea that alien ships were sitting just outside their solar system. He thought about his wife Sarah, who was waiting for him to come home. He thought about his daughter Emma, who was only 8 years old and still believed her father could fix anything. "War Commander Thexel," Jake said, "I need to discuss this with my crew and my government. Can you give us some time?" "Time is irrelevant," the alien replied. "However, We will allow you to return to your planet to begin preparation for integration. You have 7 of your days to organize your surrender. After that period, we will begin forced compliance. The screen went black. Jake stared at it for a long moment, then turned to his crew. Amy, open a channel to Earth Command. Priority Alpha. Yes, sir, Amy said. Her fingers were shaking now. Connection established. The face of Admiral Helen Brooks appeared on screen. She was a tough woman who had commanded ships for 30 years. Captain Harrison, what's your status? Admiral, we have a problem. A big one. Jake quickly explained what had happened. When he finished, Admiral Brooks was quiet for a long time. Captain, return to Earth immediately, full speed. Yes, ma'am. As the Liberty turned toward home, Jake looked out at the stars one more time. Somewhere out there, 15 alien warships were waiting. They thought humans would surrender without a fight because human technology was primitive. They thought humans were just another weak species to be conquered and enslaved. They were about to learn that they had made a very serious mistake. Jake thought about human history, about all the wars and battles his species had fought. Humans had been fighting each other for thousands of years. They had learned lessons about warfare that these aliens had never imagined. The Zephyrians had superior technology, but humans had something else. They had the experience of a species that had never stopped fighting and had never learned how to surrender. War Commander Thexel stood in the command center of his flagship and watched the human vessel disappear into the darkness. The primitive ship moved slowly, using chemical rockets that his people had abandoned centuries ago. He found it difficult to understand why these creatures had refused his generous offer of servitude. Commander, said his second officer Vextar, should we follow them and destroy their vessel? No, Thexel replied. Let them return to their world. When they see our power demonstrated, they will understand the futility of resistance. We will make an example that their entire species will remember. Thexel had conquered many worlds in his long career. The pattern was always the same. A newly discovered species would show brief defiance, then surrender when they realized the hopelessness of their position. These humans would be no different. Prepare a demonstration fleet, he ordered. 12 ships should be sufficient. We will destroy one of their outer colonies to show them what defiance costs. Meanwhile, the USS Liberty raced toward home at maximum speed. Captain Jake Harrison had called his senior staff to the small conference room behind the bridge. Lisa Taylor sat across from him, her face still pale from their encounter. Ben Rodriguez checked and rechecked his tablet, trying to make sense of the alien technology they had witnessed. Amy Chen played back recordings of the alien transmission, studying every word. What do we know about their capabilities? Jake asked. Ben looked up from his tablet. Captain, I've run the numbers a dozen times. Those ships generate more power than anything we have. Their weapons could probably destroy our largest cities with single shots. What about their numbers? Jake continued. The sensors counted at least 15 ships in that group, Lisa said. But that might just be a patrol. They talked about conquering 47 worlds. They could have hundreds of ships, maybe thousands. Amy stopped the recording and looked at the frozen image of War Commander Thexel. Captain, I've been thinking about what he said. They talked about integration and making us useful. They've done this before, many times. Jake nodded. Which means they have a system. They know how this is supposed to work. But we don't, Ben said quietly. We've never been invaded by aliens before. Jake was quiet for a moment. Then he smiled, and it was not a pleasant smile. No, Ben. But we've been invaded by each other for thousands of years. 3 days later, the Liberty arrived at Earth. Jake had never been so happy to see the blue planet, but he knew that happiness wouldn't last long. Admiral Helen Brooks was waiting for him at the space station, along with General Paul Martinez and several other high-ranking military officers. The meeting took place in a secure conference room deep inside the station. Jake told his story again, showing the recordings Amy had made. When he finished, the room was completely silent. 12 ships, General Martinez said finally. They're sending 12 ships to demonstrate their power. Where will they strike? Admiral Brooks asked. Jake thought about it. Somewhere visible but not too important. They want to scare us, not cripple us. They still want us alive to serve them. Titan, said Colonel Matt Davis, who commanded the Whittier mining station on Saturn's largest moon. He was a big man with gray hair and scars on his hands from years of military service. It's our biggest off-world facility, but it's not essential to Earth's survival. Perfect target for a demonstration. Admiral, Brooks looked at him. Colonel, can you evacuate your people? Matt thought for a moment. Most of them, yes. We have transport ships that can get the civilians out. But Admiral, I have an idea. What kind of idea? These aliens expect us to run away crying. They've conquered 47 worlds using the same playbook. Show overwhelming force, demand surrender, and collect their new slaves. Matt's eyes were hard. What if we don't follow their script? Jake leaned forward. What are you thinking, Colonel? I'm thinking about the Alamo. I'm thinking about Thermopylae. I'm thinking about every time in human history when a small group held their ground against impossible odds. Matt looked around the room. These aliens have never fought humans before. Maybe it's time we gave them a proper introduction. Admiral Brooks frowned. Colonel, you're talking about sacrifice. Those people are our responsibility, yes, ma'am, and some of us are ready to make that sacrifice. Matt's voice was steady. Admiral, I've been running that mining station for 8 years. I know every tunnel, every system, every bolt and wire. I know how to turn that whole facility into something these aliens have never seen before. General Martinez understood first. A trap. The biggest trap in human history, Matt confirmed. We evacuate the civilians, but we leave behind volunteers. We make it look like a desperate last stand by a few scared humans. When they get close enough to gloat, we show them what humans do when they're cornered. Jake felt something cold and hard forming in his stomach. Colonel, you're talking about a suicide mission. Matt nodded. Yes, sir, I am. But I'm also talking about sending a message that will echo through their entire empire. They think they know how this works. They think humans are just another weak species that will roll over when pushed. He stood up and walked to the window that looked out at Earth. The planet was beautiful and peaceful, covered in white clouds and blue oceans. It looked like nothing could ever threaten it. They're about to learn that humans are different, Matt said quietly. They're about to learn that we don't surrender. We don't bow down. And when someone threatens our home, we bite back. Admiral Brooks was quiet for a long time. Then she nodded. Colonel Davis, you have authorization to prepare your station, but I want every civilian evacuated first. Yes, ma'am. As the meeting ended and people began to leave, Jake caught Matt's arm. Colonel, are you sure about this? Matt looked at him with tired eyes. Captain, my grandfather fought in World War II. My father served in Vietnam. I've spent my whole life in the military. I always wondered what I would do when my moment came. He looked back at Earth through the window. I guess I'm about to find out. Colonel Matt Davis stood in the main control room of Titan Mining Station and watched the last civilian transport ship disappear into space. The massive facility felt empty now, with only 37 volunteers remaining from the usual crew of over 3,000. Every person who stayed knew they probably would never see Earth again. Colonel, all civilians are clear, reported Marine Captain Nicole Parker. She was 28 years old and had served 2 tours in the Middle East before joining the space program. Transport ships are maintaining radio silence as ordered. Matt nodded. The plan required the aliens to think they were attacking a fully operational station with thousands of helpless people inside. If they knew most everyone had escaped, they might change their approach. Tony, how are we doing with the preparations? Matt asked. Engineer Tony Walsh looked up from his computer terminal. He was a short, stocky man who had spent 15 years working with mining explosives. His hands were permanently stained with chemicals and he always smelled faintly of sulfur. Colonel, I've never seen anything like this. We've got enough explosive material to crack this moon in half. The plan was simple in concept but terrifying in execution. Titan Station was built inside a series of connected caverns that had been carved out over decades. The facility contained massive stores of mining explosives, fuel for the processing plants, and industrial chemicals that could be turned into weapons. Tony had spent 3 days connecting everything into one enormous bomb. The beauty of it is the chain reaction, Tony explained to the group gathered around him. The mining charges will trigger the fuel storage, which will set off the chemical processing tanks, which will detonate the main explosive storage. The whole thing should go off in about 2 seconds. Captain Parker checked her rifle for the 100th time. And we'll be right in the middle of it. That's the idea, Matt said quietly. We need to make this look real. The aliens have to believe this is a desperate last stand, not a planned trap. Through the station's main window, they could see the orange surface of Titan stretching away. Toward the horizon, the moon was cold and airless, covered with frozen lakes of methane and ammonia. It was not a place where humans were meant to live, but they had made it work anyway. "Contact!" shouted Private Jerry Collins from the communications station. He was the youngest volunteer, only 19 years old. "I'm reading multiple ships approaching. Big ones." Matt walked over to look at the sensors. 12 alien vessels were moving toward the station in perfect formation. They were beautiful in a terrifying way, like deadly silver fish swimming through the darkness of space. "Open a channel," Matt ordered. "Let's give them what they expect." The main screen flickered and showed the bridge of the lead alien ship. War Commander Thexel appeared, looking exactly as he had in Captain Harrison's recording. His black eyes showed no emotion as he stared at the humans. "Creatures of Titan Station," the alien said in his cold voice. "You have 30 of your time units to surrender. After that, we will demonstrate the cost of defying the Zephyrian Empire." Matt stepped forward. He had removed his military insignia and put on a civilian engineer's uniform. "Please, don't hurt us. We're just miners. We have families." Thexel tilted his head slightly. "Your fear is appropriate, however, your species chose defiance. Now you will serve as an example to others." "We'll surrender," Matt said, trying to sound desperate. "Just please don't kill us." "Surrender is no longer sufficient," the alien replied. "Your species must learn that resistance has consequences." The screen went dark. Matt turned to his volunteers. Every face was calm and determined. These people had all chosen to be here, knowing what it meant. "Positions, everyone," Matt said. Quietly, the volunteers spread out through the station's main levels. They needed to be visible when the aliens scanned the facility. Captain Parker took her squad to the upper levels where they could be seen through the windows. Tony stayed in the engineering section, his hand resting on the detonation control. Matt remained in the command center where the alien sensors would expect to find the station commander. "Colonel," Private Collins said from his communications post, "they're moving closer. Much closer than I expected." Matt looked at the tactical display. The alien ships were approaching in a tight formation, coming within a few hundred meters of the station. This was even better than they had hoped. "Why are they getting so close?" and Captain Parker asked over the radio. Matt smiled grimly. "Because they want to show off. They want us to see their ships up close so we understand how hopeless this is. They want to be close enough to watch us die." The alien ships took up positions around the station like a pack of wolves circling their prey. Matt could see their weapon systems charging, energy building up for what would be a devastating display of power. "Tony," Matt said into his radio, "are you ready?" "Ready, Colonel." "Private Collins, send one last message to Earth Command. Tell them Phase 1 is complete." "Message sent, sir." Matt looked around the command center one more time. Through the windows, he could see the alien ships hanging in space like mechanical angels of death. Their hulls gleamed in the light from Saturn, and their weapons glowed with deadly energy. "Gentlemen and ladies," Matt said over the station's intercom, "it has been an honor serving with you." The first alien energy beam struck the station's outer hull. The blast was designed to disable, not destroy. The aliens wanted to capture the facility intact and use the survivors as examples. They had no idea what was about to happen. Matt thought about his grandfather, who had died at Normandy. He thought about his father, who had served in Vietnam. He thought about every human who had ever stood their ground against impossible odds. "Now, Tony," he said calmly, Tony Walsh pressed the detonation button. For a brief moment, a new sun bloomed in the space around Titan. The explosion was visible from Earth, 1,400 million kilometers away. When the light faded, Titan station was gone. 4 Zephyrian ships had been completely destroyed and 3 others were severely damaged. War Commander Thexel stared at his tactical display in complete shock. In all his centuries of conquest, he had never seen anything like this. The humans had destroyed themselves to hurt his fleet. It made no sense. It violated every rule of civilized warfare. It was insane. It was also terrifyingly effective. For the first time in his long career, Thexel felt something he had never experienced before. He felt fear. War Commander Thexel paced back and forth on the bridge of his flagship. The reports from Titan Station made no sense. Hundreds of his officers were trying to understand what had happened, but their computers could not explain human behavior. "Commander," said his tactical officer Kexavol, "the humans destroyed their own facility. They killed themselves to damage our ships. This violates all known patterns of warfare." Thexel stopped pacing and stared at the empty space where Titan Station used to be. His fleet had lost 4 ships and nearly 1,000 soldiers. No primitive species had ever inflicted such losses on the Zephyrian Empire. "Send word to the High Command," Thexel ordered. "Tell them we need reinforcements. Many reinforcements." "How many ships shall I request?" asked Kexvol. "All of them." 3 days later, War Commander Thexel led the largest invasion fleet in the Zephyrian history toward Earth. 500 ships filled the darkness of space, carrying enough firepower to destroy entire star systems. Never before had the Empire committed so many resources to conquering a single world. But as the fleet approached the human solar system, strange things began to happen. Major Sam Roberts floated in his modified asteroid mining ship deep in the outer reaches of the solar system. His vessel looked like a piece of space junk, covered with fake rock and metal designed to fool enemy sensors. Inside, 23 other human soldiers waited in complete silence. "Contact," whispered Sergeant Lisa Green from the sensor station. "Single alien scout ship, heading our way." Sam smiled in the darkness. For 2 weeks, human forces had been preparing surprises throughout the solar system. They had studied every guerrilla warfare manual ever written, from ancient China to modern Afghanistan. The aliens expected conventional space battles with fleets meeting in open space. They were about to get something very different. "Wait until it passes the marker," Sam ordered quietly. The alien scout ship drifted past their hiding place, its sensors focused on the inner planets. The aliens never suspected that humans might be hiding among the asteroids like ancient warriors, hiding in forests. "Now," Sam said. The fake asteroid split open like in flour, revealing hidden engines and weapons. Sam's ship accelerated straight toward the alien vessel, all guns firing. The scout ship tried to turn, but it was too late. The human vessel rammed into it at full speed, both ships exploding in a brief flash of light. But Sam and his crew were not on the ship. They had been beamed away seconds before impact, picked up by another hidden vessel. It was a tactic no alien species had ever used because it required humans to risk their lives in ways that seemed impossible. All across the outer solar system, similar attacks were happening. Captain Linda Foster led a squadron of modified cargo ships that appeared to be fleeing in panic. When alien ships moved to intercept them, the cargo vessels suddenly revealed hidden weapons and attacked like wounded animals fighting for their lives. Engineer Carlos Lopez had turned the mining platforms near Jupiter into weapons. When alien ships approached what looked like abandoned industrial sites, they found themselves surrounded by explosions and debris fired from electromagnetic launchers. The Zephyrian fleet began to slow down as reports poured in from all directions. Their scouts were disappearing. Their advanced ships were being attacked by enemies that appeared from nowhere and vanished just as quickly. Nothing in their military manuals explained this kind of warfare. "Commander," reported Kexvol, "we have lost 47 ships in the outer system. The humans are not fighting like any species we have encountered." Thexel studied the tactical displays. Red marks showed where his ships had been destroyed or damaged. The attacks seemed random, but he was beginning to see a pattern. The humans were not trying to win battles. They were trying to teach the Zephyrians fear. "They are making us afraid to advance," he said slowly. "Every ship that moves forward might be the next one to die." Meanwhile, on Earth, Admiral Helen Brooks stood in the command center deep beneath the North American Defense Complex. Hundreds of military officers worked at computer stations, coordinating the defense of humanity's home world. "Admiral," reported General Paul Martinez, "Phase 2 is working better than we hoped. They've lost almost 50 ships and they're still 2 days away from Earth." Admiral Brooks nodded, but her face remained serious. "Paul, we're fighting the entire Zephyrian Empire. 50 ships is nothing compared to what they have, but it's something they've never experienced before," said Colonel Jennifer Walsh, who had been studying alien military tactics. "Admiral, I've been reading their communication intercepts. They're confused and frightened. They don't understand why we fight this way." On the main screen, images from around the solar system showed the continuing battle. Human forces appeared from hiding places that seemed impossible, struck hard, and disappeared before the aliens could respond. Asteroid fields became hunting grounds. Empty space became deadly territory. The aliens found themselves fighting an enemy that used the entire solar system as a weapon. "They expected to fight our fleet," Admiral Brooks said quietly. "Instead, they're fighting our history." Secretary of Defense Rick Thompson looked up from his briefing papers. "What do you mean, Admiral?" "Every human who ever hid in a jungle and fought an occupying army. Every resistance fighter who ever used the enemy's strength against them. Every guerrilla who ever turned weakness into victory." Admiral Brooks gestured at the tactical displays showing attacks throughout the solar system. "We're not just fighting with our ships and weapons, we're fighting with thousands of years of human experience." War Commander Thexel received the latest casualty reports and felt something cold forming in his chest. The Zephyrian Empire had conquered worlds across the galaxy, using overwhelming force and technological superiority. They had never faced an enemy that fought back the way humans did. "Commander," said his communications officer, "we are receiving a transmission from the human homeworld." "Put it through." The screen showed Admiral Brooks standing in what was obviously a military command center. She looked directly at Thexel with calm, determined eyes. "War Commander Thexel," she said, "you came here expecting to find a weak species that would surrender when faced with superior technology. Instead, you found humans. We are the children of a world where the strong do not always win. We have spent our entire history learning how to fight enemies who seem impossible to defeat." She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice was hard as steel. "You have seen nothing yet. What you've experienced in our outer system is just the beginning. Every step closer to Earth will cost you more ships, more soldiers, more blood. We will make you pay for every kilometer of space, every hour of time, every breath you take in our solar system." The transmission ended. Thexel stared at the blank screen for a long time. He was beginning to understand that the Zephyrian Empire had made a terrible mistake. They had not invaded a planet. They had invaded a graveyard of empires, a world that had buried every conqueror who had ever tried to claim it. And now, it was their turn to learn what that meant. War Commander Thexel stood before the massive view screen on his flagship and stared at the blue planet called Earth. His invasion fleet had finally reached the human homeworld, but the cost had been terrible. Over 100 ships lost in the outer system, thousands of soldiers dead, and still the humans had not surrendered. "Commander," said Kexval quietly, "the fleet requests permission to begin orbital bombardment. We can destroy their cities from space and force their surrender." Thexel was tempted. It would be easy to blast the human cities into dust and end this nightmare, but the High Command wanted human slaves, not a dead world. "No, we land ground forces and take the planet intact. Begin landing operations immediately." But as the first Zephyrian ships descended toward Earth's surface, they found something impossible waiting for them. Every human city had been turned into a fortress. Every building was a potential weapons platform. Every street was a killing ground, designed to trap invaders. Captain Kelly Murphy crouched in the ruins of downtown Chicago with her squad of 12 soldiers. She had spent 3 days preparing this position, studying urban warfare tactics from Stalingrad to Sarajevo. The aliens would expect to find terrified civilians hiding in their homes. Instead, they would find warriors who had turned their own city into a weapon. "Contact," whispered Sergeant Mike Torres from his position across the street. "Alien landing craft approaching from the north." Kelly smiled grimly. The aliens were landing in the city center, just as the humans had hoped. They probably expected to set up a command post and begin processing civilians for slavery. They had no idea what humans had learned from centuries of urban warfare. The alien ship touched down in what used to be Grant Park. Its doors opened and 50 Zephyrian soldiers marched out in perfect formation. They carried advanced energy weapons and moved with the confidence of conquerors who had never been seriously challenged. Kelly waited until they were completely exposed, then pressed the detonation button in her hand. The entire park exploded, as hidden charges turned trees, benches, and decorative fountains into deadly shrapnel. Half the alien squad was destroyed instantly. The survivors tried to find cover, but there was none. Kelly's soldiers opened fire from windows, rooftops, and sewers. The aliens had superior weapons, but they were fighting in an environment designed to confuse and trap them. Similar battles were happening in every major city on Earth. In New York, Colonel Frank Adams led his forces through subway tunnels that had been turned into underground highways for human fighters. In Los Angeles, Major Christine Lee used the maze of freeways and overpasses to launch hit-and-run attacks on confused alien formations. But the most important battle was happening. In a small room deep beneath the Pentagon, Admiral Helen Brooks sat at a computer terminal with a direct connection to the global communications network. Next to her, Dr. Robert Kim worked frantically to complete the most dangerous mission in human history. "Admiral, the upload is ready," Dr. Kim said, sweat running down his face. "But if we do this, there's no going back. Once they see our historical records, they'll understand exactly what kind of species we are." Admiral Brooks thought about the battles raging across Earth's surface. She thought about Colonel Davis and his volunteers at Titan Station. She thought about all the humans who had died to bring the aliens to this moment. "Doctor, upload everything. Show them who we really are." Dr. Kim pressed a key, and humanity's complete historical database began transmitting directly to the Zephyrian fleet. Military records from every war ever fought, tactical manuals from Sun Tzu to modern special forces, documentation of every siege, every resistance movement, every time humans had faced impossible odds and refused to surrender. On his flagship, War Commander Thexel received an alert that human communications were trying to connect to his ship's computers. He almost ordered his staff to block the transmission, but curiosity stopped him. "Let it through," he said. "I want to see what these creatures think is important enough to send us in the middle of a battle." The data flood began immediately. Thexel watched in growing horror as thousands of years of human warfare unfolded before him. He saw armies that fought to the last soldier rather than surrender. He saw cities that burned themselves rather than submit to conquerors. He saw warriors who chose death over slavery, again and again and again. He watched the siege of Masada, where Jewish fighters killed themselves rather than become Roman slaves. He saw the Warsaw Ghetto uprising, where humans fought tanks with pistols and bottles. He witnessed Stalingrad, where an entire city became a graveyard for invaders. He studied Vietnam, where farmers with simple weapons defeated the most powerful military in human history. "Kexful," Thexel said in a shaking voice, "access the historical records of all our previous conquests." His tactical officer worked quickly at his console. "Commander, I have the data. Show me a single example of a species that destroyed itself rather than surrender. Show me one conquered world that turned its own cities into weapons. Show me any race that has ever fought the way humans fight." Kexval searched through the records of 47 conquered worlds. His face grew pale as the truth became clear. "Commander, there are no examples. No species has ever behaved this way." Thexel continued reading the human historical files. Every page showed the same terrifying pattern. Humans who faced extinction fought harder, not softer. Humans who should surrender found new ways to resist. Humans who had no hope of victory chose to make their enemies pay the highest possible price. "Commander," reported his communications officer, "we're receiving casualty reports from the surface. Ground forces are requesting immediate evacuation. They report that human resistance is beyond anything in our training manuals." Thexel closed his eyes. In the space of a few days, he had learned something that shattered everything he thought he knew about warfare. Technology did not guarantee victory. Superior numbers did not ensure conquest. There was something more powerful than weapons or ships. There was the will to fight even when fighting meant certain death. "Order all forces to withdraw from the planet's surface," Thexel said quietly. "Sir?" Kexval could not believe what he was hearing. "You heard me. Full withdrawal. All ships are to pull back to the edge of this solar system. Commander, the High Command will demand an explanation." Thexel looked at the data still streaming from Earth. Records of human resistance that stretched back to the beginning of their recorded history. Documentation of a species that had learned to turn weakness into strength, defeat into victory, death into weapon. "Tell the High Command that we have encountered something new," he said. "Tell them we have found a species that cannot be conquered, because they have spent their entire existence learning how to fight the unconquerable." He paused, watching Earth turn slowly in space. Such a small blue world, so beautiful and peaceful looking. It was hard to believe that such a place could produce the most dangerous warriors in the galaxy. "Tell them we have discovered humans, and tell them to establish a quarantine zone around this entire system. No Zephyrian ship is to come within 10 light years of this place." "A quarantine, sir? But they're just one small planet." Thexel thought about Colonel Davis destroying Titan Station. He thought about human fighters appearing from asteroids and empty space. He thought about cities that became weapons and soldiers who chose death over defeat. "Kexval, do you know what happens when you corner a dangerous animal?" "It fights back, sir." "Exactly. And humans, it seems, are the most dangerous animals in the galaxy. We came here to make them our slaves. Instead, we have learned that some species should never be caged." As the Zephyrian fleet withdrew from human space, word began to spread throughout the galaxy. The mighty empire had retreated from a primitive world. A species with chemical rockets had forced the most powerful military force in known space to run away. Other alien civilizations began to study these strange creatures called humans. They read the historical records that Earth continued to broadcast, learning about a species that had turned warfare into an art form. And in the darkness between the stars, the legend began to grow. The legend of a small blue world, where the inhabitants had never learned to surrender and never would.